You have broken the rules, Sandra. Do you remember years ago when you came here, crying and weeping in pains, when your husband threw you out of the house like a trash, humiliated and disgraced you, even to the extent of forcing you to wash the panties of his side cheeks? Do you remember how broken you are? Do you? That is one thing with you mortals. You only think for yourself. You only think only about yourself. I have kept to the end of my own baggage. And you, what do you do? I have given you everything that you have now. I've given you everything you can have, even in generations to come. And you decide to betray me, to take me for granted, just because of a young man. and you think in your narrow mind there is nothing I can do. But guess what? It's too late now, Sandra. It's too late. You will wander, lost the rest of your days. In the bustling city of Lagos, there was a woman known by everyone as the Sugar Mommy of Lagos. Her real name was Madam Sandra, but nobody called her that. Sandra was 45 years old, very wealthy, and lived a life of pure luxury. When I say luxury, a very luxurious lifestyle. She owned big houses in Lekki, Victoria Island, and even out of the country. She had flashy cars, the latest models, always parked in a large garage. Her companies were spread across different states, making her a powerful business woman. It was said everywhere that Sandra was a philanthropist. Wherever she went, people gathered and greeted her with respect, not just because of her money, but because she showed love to the streets. Sandra loved going to the ghetto. Whenever she stepped into the crowded streets, children and adults would cheer for her. They knew she always came with gifts, cash, food, clothes, and sometimes even new cars for some lucky boys. The people loved her because she shared her wealth generously. But there was more than Sandra's wealth and kindness. Sandra had a particular interest in young men, boys in their early 20s struggling to make something out of their life. They were still hustling, trying to get jobs, learn trade, or make music. These boys are full of dreams. When Sandra see any of them, she will appear to them like their savior. She will step out of her black car wearing expensive designer clothes and offer them hope. You, she will say, pointing to a particular young man standing by the roadside. Come with me, I will change your life. The boys who were chosen felt so lucky. She would take them in her car, driving them away from the noisy streets of the ghetto and straight into the heart of Lekki, where the rich and powerful lived. Her house was like nothing they had ever seen before. Marble floors, a large swimming pool. The boys will be given luxurious bedrooms and they will feel like kings in her home. Sandra made promises. I will make you rich. You will never suffer again, she would tell them. And the boys believed her. After all, she had the money to back up her words. She bought them expensive clothes, the latest gadgets, and even cars. She took them to high-end restaurants and showed them a life they could only dream of. Once Sandra took a boy in, she would use him as a bed warmer every night. She made them sleep with her, The boys didn't mind at first because they thought they were lucky to be with such a powerful, posh, wealthy woman. They don't know what was really happening though. Unknown to them, Sandra was secretly collecting their sperms. Each time she slept with each of them, after every encounter, the boys were asleep. She would sneak into a secret room. In that room was a diabolic pot hidden behind a thick red curtain. The pot was strange. It was always hot, bubbling and smoking, even though there was no fire under it. Hmm. This was where the real secret of Sandra wealth laid. As Sandra poured the sperm she collected from the boys into the pot, her wealth will continue to grow and grow and grow. The more sperm she had, the more money she made. Her business expanded. Her bank's accounts grew fatter and her influence became even more stronger. The pot held dark magic and it was fueled by the essence of the boys she took in. The boys had no idea that their strength, their energy was being drained into that pot to make Sandra more richer. After she must have slept with these boys for like 1 month, Sandra would get tired of the boys. Once she has taken enough from them, she would dismiss them like a piece of trash. You can leave now, she will say coldly, and just like that, everything she had given them will be taken back. The cars, the clothes, the phones, all gone. The boys will be left with nothing. They will return back to the streets, confused and broken. But none of them has ever spoke out because she do threaten them and make them sign an agreement that they won't spill anything that happened. Instead, she will use the police to arrest them. Each time Sandra returned to the ghetto, she will pick new boys, and the cycle continued. The streets will hail her sugar mommy of Lagos, and she will smile, knowing that her secret was safe. Sandra, the sugar mommy of Lagos, had a routine. She didn't just visit one ghetto. No, she had many ghettos across Lagos where she went to find young, fresh boys. Each ghetto had its own struggles, and every young man there was looking for a way out. Sandra knew this. She knew that these boys would do anything to escape the hard life of the streets. Whenever Sandra noticed that people in a particular ghetto were beginning to talk too much about her, she would disappear from there. The whispers about her strange ways was quite getting out small. People started murmuring, but none could actually comfort or speak out because they all signed an agreement, else they will rot in jail. Lagos is a big city and there are many places where people didn't know her. Sandra would show up in new ghettos. There where no one had heard the stories, she would step out of her fancy car wearing expensive clothes, and immediately the young men would gather around her. Curious, she promised them a life of luxury, a life they had only dreamed of. Come with me, she would say to one lucky boy. I will make you rich. You will never have to struggle again. And again, just like that, she will pick a new boy and take him away to a mansion in Lekki. The boys would believe her promises. She would shower him with gifts, cars, money, trips to expensive places. But just like before, after using him in her bed, she would collect his sperm and pour it into a diabolic pot. The more sperm she collected, the more her wealth grew. This continued for years as Sandra moved from ghetto to ghetto, picking boys, using them and dumping them. She was untouchable. One day, as Sandra visited the ghetto as usual, it didn't take long for her to spot a young man named Amaka. He was tall, handsome, and in his early 20s, just the type Sandra liked. Emeka was struggling to make ends meet, doing small jobs here and there to support a sick mother in the village. When Sandra approached him with her usual promises, Emeka refused at first but eventually agreed. She promised to change his life, help him with his family, and even pay for his mother's medical bills. Emeka saw this as an opportunity from heaven. If only he knew. Emeka got into Sandra's luxurious car. She drove him straight to her mansion in Lekki. The house was like nothing he had ever seen before. So big, so beautiful. It was as if he entered a whole new world. Sandra gave him a room to stay, bought him new clothes, and told him that his life was about to change forever. But soon, things took a turn. What do you guess? What are you guessing? So, what do you think Sandra would do with Emeka? Please, if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, click on that subscription button. Do you think Emeka is going to be our last bus stop? Or what do you think? Please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up so that other people will get to watch it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sandra has always tried to get Emeka into her bed. She had done it so many times with other boys, and it has always worked, but Emeka was different. When Sandra made her move, Emeka refused. "You promised to help me. I didn't come here to sleep with you. I can't do this, please," Emeka said. Sandra was surprised. No boy had ever resisted her before. She tried everything. She sweet-talked him, telling him how lucky he was to be with her. But Emeka didn't budge. He was firm in his belief. Even when Sandra seduced him with her bare naked body, showing off her wealth and power, Emeka refused to give in. His mind was focused on helping his mother, not on betraying his values. Days passed, and Sandra grew frustrated. She needed Emeka's sperm to add to her diabolic pot, the pot that gave her wealth and power. The rules of the pot were strict. She had to sleep with each man for 1 month before she could get the sperm and add it to the pot. If she didn't follow the rules, the magic won't work. One day, Emeka's phone rang. It was a call from the village, and the news was bad. His mother was seriously ill, and he didn't have enough money to take care of her. Emeka desperately went to Sandra and begged her for money. He told her about his sick mother and how she was the only family he had, and how he needed money immediately to save her life. Sandra saw this as a chance. She told Emeka she would give him the money, but only if he agreed to sleep with her. With no other option in sight, Emeka felt trapped. He didn't want to do this, but he couldn't bear the thought of losing his mother. Finally, after much refusal, he gave in and slept with Sandra. That night was different for Sandra. Emeka was not like the other boys she had used before. He was strong, kind, and surprisingly good in bed. For the first time, Sandra felt something she has never felt before, an attachment. She started harboring strange thoughts. Normally, after she slept with a young man, she would immediately collect the sperm and add it to the pot to maintain her wealth. But this time, she hesitated. She didn't want to lose Emeka. She felt Emeka was special. She had always followed the rules of the pot, but for the first time, she thought about breaking them. She wasn't ready to let go of Emeka, not just 1 month. Could she keep him? Could she have been with him and her wealth? Could she have him and her wealth? What do you think? After that night, Emeka felt horrible. His heart was heavy with guilt for what he had done. Sleeping with Sandra wasn't what he wanted, but he had no choice. He had to save his mother. As he sat alone in the guest room of Sandra's mansion, thoughts of regret filled his mind. He had never imagined that his desperation would lead him to compromise his values. But to Emeka's surprise, Sandra began to act differently. The next morning, she brought him breakfast in bed, something she had never done for any young man before. Her behavior was soft, kind, and caring. She showered him with gifts, love, and attention. She told him how special he was, how no man has ever made her feel this way. Emeka could hardly believe it. Sandra, the cold, calculating woman who used and dumped young men, was treating him like a king. Sandra had fallen deeply in love with Emeka. His resistance, his strength, and his innocence has touched something deep inside of her. She couldn't explain it, but she felt that Emeka was different. She no longer saw him as just another boy to be used and discarded. She wanted him to stay, to be with her, and to share in her luxurious life. She took him on expensive dates, flew him on private jets to luxurious destinations, and dressed him in the finest clothes. Emeka, caught in the whirlwind of luxury and care, had no other choice but to return Sandra's kindness. The two of them began spending more time together. They went on dates to high-end restaurants, shopping trips to the most exclusive stores in Lagos, and the luxurious vacation to exotic locations. Sandra treated Emeka as her equal, not as someone beneath her, and she wanted the world to know that she had found someone special. But as they continued to sleep together and live this lavish lifestyle, Sandra forgot something very important. Guess what it is? One morning, exactly a month after Sandra had brought Emeka into her luxurious world, she woke up with an uneasy feeling something wasn't right. It glowed on her as she went about her morning routine. Finally, the fear became unbearable, and she hurried to her secret room, the one where the diabolic pot had been a source of wealth was laying. She had forgotten to check on it in her excitement over Emeka. As she put back the heavy red curtain and approached the pot, her heart dropped. The pot wasn't smoking like it always did. In fact, the pot was stone cold. Sandra touched it, her fingers trembling. The coldness of the pot sent chills through her entire body. She couldn't believe what was happening. Fear gripped her heart. She remembered the rules, the ancient rules of the pot, the one she had followed for years without fail. If she didn't pour Emeka's sperm into the pot after a month of sleeping with him, there would be a heavy price to pay. And that price is her life. She had been so lost in his love for him, so wrapped up in her happiness, that she had broken the one rule that she could have never had broken. Panic. Sandra rushed out of the house, not even bothering to change from her nightgown. She ran to her car and sped off, heading straight to the sacred river where years ago her life had changed forever. The river goddess had given her the pot and the power that came with it. She made a path then, and that path she had now broken. As she approached at the river, Sandra fell to her knees, sobbing and pleading for forgiveness. The water remained calm for a moment, and then the surface began to ripple. Slowly, the river goddess rose from the depths, her eyes glowing with a cold, otherworldly light. Her presence was powerful, and Sandra could feel the weight of her judgment even before the goddess spoke. The goddess looked at her with disdain. "You've broken the rules, Sandra," the river goddess said, her voice echoing like a thunderstorm over the water. "Do you remember why you came to me all those years ago? When your husband threw you out like a trash, humiliated you, and forced you to wash the panties of his side chick. Do you remember how broken you are?" Sandra nodded, Tears streaming down her face, she remembered it all too well. Her husband's cruelty had driven her to the river, where she had begged for a way out. For a life of power and wealth that no man could take from her, the river goddess had answered her prayers, giving her the diabolic pot and the wealth she craved. I help you. I gave you all that you need now, and you chose me over everything. You chose me over a young man. You will have to pay the price. Please, please, Sandra pleaded. I will do anything. Just give me another chance. I will fix it. It is too late, Sandra. The pot was never meant to go cold. You've made it so, and now you will pay the price. Before Sandra could say another word, the goddess raised a hand. You will wander lost for the rest of your days. Sandra screamed as her words shattered. Her mind broke, and she began to laugh uncontrollably. Her wealth, her power, her luxurious life, it had all faded as she was consumed by madness. She stumbled away from the river. Her once beautiful, carefully maintained appearance was now broken. She wandered through the streets, talking to herself, shouting at invisible figures and laughing at things only she could see. The great sugar mummy of Lagos was now nothing but a mad woman roaming around the streets. Meanwhile, Emeka had been worried. Days had passed and he hadn't heard from Sandra. She had not even picked his calls, and the mansion seemed deserted. His guilt still weighed heavily on him, but he couldn't deny that he has grown fond of her and her generosity. Consigned and decided to go out to run some errand, hoping that maybe Sandra was just busy with her business. As he was leaving a supermarket, something caught his eyes. Across the street, he saw a woman stumbling around talking to herself, her head wide, her clothes filthy. At first, he didn't recognize her, but as he looked closer, his heart dropped. It was Sandra. Emeka ran across the street and grabbed her gently. Sandra! Sandra! What happened? He asked, his voice full of shock and concern. But she didn't recognize him. Her eyes were vacant and she muttered nonsense, laughing in between words. With the help of some bystanders, Emeka managed to take her to the hospital. Emeka did everything he could to help Sandra. After seeing her in such a state, he rushed her to the hospital where doctors worked tirelessly to treat her. But despite their efforts, Sandra remained lost in her own world, laughing and talking to herself as if trapped in a nightmare. Emeka felt helpless as days passed with no sign of improvement. One night, as Emeka lay in the hospital chair beside her bed, he fell into a deep sleep. In his dream, he found himself standing by a dark river, the water flowing rapidly. Suddenly, a beautiful year's fiancé figure rose from the depths. The river goddess. Her eyes sparkled with anger and her voice echoed through the air, warning him to stay away from Sandra. You don't understand what you are dealing with or whom you are dealing with. If you know what is good for you, let her be. Leave her or face the consequences. Emeka awoke with a start, his heart racing. The dream felt too real, too intense to ignore. He couldn't understand what it meant or why the goddess would warn him, but he knew that Sandra was in trouble and he couldn't abandon her. With each passing day, as her condition worsened, Emeka felt an overwhelming sense of love for her. Despite everything, he realized that he had fallen deeply in love with Sandra. Desperate for answers, Emeka thought of a spiritualist he had heard about in the ghetto, a woman known for her ability to see beyond the physical world. maybe she could help. Without hesitation, he took Sandra to visit the spiritualist, hoping it would shed light on Sandra's condition. When they arrived, the spiritualist welcomed them warmly with a sense of seriousness. After examining Sandra and consulting her spirit, she turned to Emeka with a grave expression. Your love for her is strong, but she carries a dark secret. The river goddess has cursed her for breaking the rules of the pot, and only the truth can set her free. Emeka listened in shock as the spiritualist explained how Sandra had made a deal with the river goddess for wealth and power, but in so doing, she had forgotten her humanity and bond of love. The goddess was punishing her for breaking her promise and losing her way. Determined to help Sandra, Emeka spent days by her side, reading her stories, sharing his dreams, and reminding her of the life they had built together. Slowly, with Emeka's love and support, Sandra began to heal. The madness began to slightly fade away, and the light returned to her eyes. She was awoke. She woke up one morning, confused but grateful to find Emeka by her side. Emeka, you saved me, she whispered, tears of gratitude streaming down her face as their love blossomed. Sandra opened up to him about her past. She told him about her ex-husband, how he had maltreated her, and how she had promised herself never to fall in love again. But now with Emeka, she felt something different, a warmth and a connection she thought she had lost forever. As they began dating, their bond grew stronger. Emeka learned to embrace Sandra's past, and she learned to trust again. However, there was one shadow looming over their happiness. Sandra had reached her menopause and could not have children again. This was a difficult realization for both of them, but they refused to let it stand in the way of their love. After much thought and discussion, they decided to explore surrogacy. With hope in their hearts, they found a kind and loving surrogate who agreed to help them fulfill their dream of becoming parents. After months of anticipation, the couple was overjoyed when they received the news that they are expecting twins, a boy and a girl. When the day finally arrived, Sandra and Emeka held their beautiful children in their arms, tears of joy flowing down their faces. They named them Joy and Hope, representing everything they had fought for and overcome together. Their family was a blend of love, and a newfound appreciation for life. As they watched their children grow, Sandra and Emeka often reflected on the darkness that had once threatened to tear them apart. They understand that love had the power to heal even the deepest wound, and together they had found a way to break the chains of the past. The river goddess may had once ruined Sandra's life, but now it was love that healed, the ultimate power, a love that will last a lifetime. The end.